My name is Erin Stone. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Denver, Colorado. This is the story of how my parents, especially my mother, invaded not only my house but my career, my identity, and nearly my sanity, until I locked them out of my life, one door at a time. I had just flown back from Los Angeles. 10 grueling days of back-to-back strategy meetings for our new biotech launch had left me running on fumes. All I wanted was a hot shower, instant noodles, and some soothing Miles Davis on vinyl. But when I turned into my driveway, I slammed on the brakes so hard my tires screeched. There, sitting proudly in the center of my lavender-lined lawn, was a rust-colored wrought iron patio set I hadn't seen in over a decade. It was my mother's. A crooked wooden sign that read "Bless This Home" dangled from a nail on the front door, something straight out of a cringeworthy craft blog. And right in front of my garage, parked in the exact spot I always used, was my father's silver SUV. I hadn't even grabbed my suitcase from the trunk when the front door swung open. "Welcome home, sweetheart," my mother chirped, holding a kitchen towel like she'd been waiting to star in a Hallmark special. I froze. "Mom, what is going on?" "Oh, your dad's inside watching TV. Come in, I just made pot roast." She turned and walked back into the house, leaving me, her adult daughter, a homeowner, a professional, in the yard like an uninvited guest. I dragged my suitcase inside, and what I saw next stole the air from my lungs. Gone were the slate-gray walls I had painted with my own two hands. In their place was a saccharine shade of peachy pink. Family photos I had never seen before lined the shelves. Ceramic angels, crocheted doilies, and a massive wooden cross above the TV, all new. None of it mine. The house I had painstakingly built, dollar by dollar, hour by hour, now looked like a 1980s retirement home. "I repainted," my mom said proudly. "The old color was so gloomy. This brings the room to life." My hand gripped the suitcase tighter. "Mom, what are you doing? This is my house. We're family, Erin," she replied, as if I were scolding her for borrowing a sweater. "Why are you being so harsh? You're hurting my feelings." She placed a tray of cookies on the coffee table, the one I had bought last month, now covered with a lace cloth and tacky flower decals. "Your dad retired early, and rent went up. This just made sense. You didn't even call me. If I had, you'd have said no. I knew that. But families don't need permission." I glanced at where my home office used to be. Instead, there was now a leather recliner and a new landline phone with a blinking red light. My dad gave me a lazy smile from his throne. "This place is cozy, just like I told you." My throat closed. "Where's my office?" "It's the den now," Mom said brightly. "Your dad needs a space to relax." "You've got to be kidding." "Don't overreact," she cooed. "You're successful. You can work anywhere." I didn't answer. I took the stairs two at a time and locked myself in my bedroom, thankfully untouched. But I wasn't untouched. I texted the only person I trusted with legal matters, Emma, my lawyer. "Need urgent legal advice. Family took over my house." "Not joking." She replied within minutes. "Start collecting evidence." I looked around. My bedroom was the only space left. Everything else, the food, the finances, the furniture, had been hijacked. The next morning, I opened the fridge and froze. My almond milk, vegan mayo, and overnight oats were gone. In their place were meatloaf, canned whipped cream, and bottled lemonade. My mother stood at the stove, flipping waffles. "Do you want coffee with almond milk or whipped cream?" she asked. I didn't answer. I opened my banking app. 5 transaction alerts. One stood out, $1,870 at Denver Home and Garden. Who used my credit card? "Oh, that," Mom said casually. "I just borrowed it. We needed a new dining set. The old one was depressing. I'll pay you back when your dad gets his tax refund." When did you even take my card? Last night. You were asleep. I needed it urgently. I stared at her. You're 32, sweetie. You're fine. We're your parents. But I wasn't fine. And I wasn't a child. My office was gone. My food thrown out. My credit hijacked. My boundaries erased. All under the banner of family. And worst of all, this wasn't new. It was the same manipulation wrapped in a new ribbon. Last year, my mother sold my car while I was out of town. It was old, she'd said. I was going to buy you a new one. She never did. 2 years ago, she gave a relative access to my emergency savings. I lost $6,200. She called me selfish for freezing the account afterward. The pattern wasn't subtle anymore. It was a full-blown invasion. I sat on the edge of my bed, texted my best friend Naomi, and then called my half-brother Ethan in Texas. They listened. They understood. And they both said the same thing: if you don't draw the line now, it's going to get worse. That day, I went to City Point with my deed, my bank statements, and Emma's instructions. I was no longer asking for space, I was reclaiming what was mine. And that was only the beginning. When I walked out of Emma's office that day, a stack of eviction paperwork in my bag, I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I felt steady. Grounded. Like a woman stepping onto solid earth after years of living on emotional quicksand. The plan was simple, legal, and tight. Emma made sure of it. My parents had no lease, no documentation, no consent. I was the sole owner of the property. We weren't in a gray area anymore, this was black and white. But when I pulled up to my house that afternoon, all that resolve went cold. There were cars, too many, lined along the curb and across my driveway. A string of pink and gold balloons arched over the porch. On the front door was a handwritten sign that made my stomach drop. Welcome home party for Mr. and Mrs. Stone. Home? I walked in and was nearly knocked backward by the smell of potpourri and too much perfume. Strangers filled the house. I recognized maybe 3 faces from old family reunions, and even they looked confused when they saw me. Oh, Erin, you're just in time, my mother called, gliding toward me like the queen of a kingdom she had crowned herself in. I was just telling Aunt Margie that you live here when you're not off working somewhere fabulous. I blinked. This is my house. She smiled, wide and sugary. Of course it is. But it's the family's home too, isn't it? I turned away without a word, pulled out my phone, and started recording. Every inch of that house had been transformed again. My sleek, minimalist furniture was now hidden under lace throws and decorative pillows embroidered with verses like "Home is where the heart is." My personal photos, me with my project team in Switzerland, me and Naomi at a vineyard in Napa, had been replaced with blown-up wedding portraits of my parents. Everywhere I looked, I saw a version of my past I had never agreed to relive. In the corner, my father poured wine like he didn't even notice me. I texted Naomi. They're throwing a party. Recording everything. Sending to Emma. Seconds later, a notification from Ethan buzzed in. Did you know Mom called your boss? My heart skipped. What? What did she say? That you were having a breakdown. Said you were mentally unwell after a breakup. Tried to get you placed on leave. I nearly dropped the phone. I had broken up with Kyle a few months ago. It was mutual. It wasn't messy. And it definitely didn't warrant a fake wellness check. I called Miss Reyes, head of HR at my firm. She picked up right away. Erin, I was just about to return your message. You got a call from my mother? Yes. She claimed to be your legal guardian and said you were mentally unstable. But don't worry. We didn't take it seriously. I'm 32. I'm mentally sound. I own my home. She has no legal rights over me. I know, Erin. We've already flagged it in your file. If you need written support for any legal action, I'm happy to provide it. I thanked her, but my fingers trembled with fury. They weren't just moving into my house, they were trying to dismantle my reputation. My career. My entire life. That night, Naomi came over with a mini voice recorder and 2 indoor security cameras. She helped me install one above the front door and one in what was left of my home office. We worked quietly, the air thick with unspoken truths. Ethan, meanwhile, had dug up old messages, screenshots of Mom texting him about giving my financial info to cousin Nathan. There was even a Facebook post bragging that she had used my emergency savings to restore the family's dignity after her ungrateful daughter refused to help. I forwarded every bit to Emma. The next morning, I received an unexpected email from a real estate agent. Looking forward to the appraisal appointment this Tuesday, scheduled by Mrs. Nancy Stone. Let us know if any details change. I felt like I'd been slapped. I called the number instantly. The agent sounded surprised. Oh, aren't you co-owners? No. I'm the sole legal owner. There's no co-signature, no shared deed, no documentation giving my mother any rights to this house. He paused. She said she was helping her daughter transfer ownership. If this appraisal goes through, I will sue for trespassing and fraud. Understood. I'll cancel the appointment immediately. I hung up and sat in silence. My mother had tried to sell my house. Without a word. Without consent. I forwarded the email and screenshots to Emma. The last straw wasn't even the party. Or the fake mental health allegations. It was what happened that Monday afternoon. I walked into the living room where my mother lounged barefoot, chatting on speakerphone, flipping through a home flooring catalog. I stood straight. Calm. Clutching a red plastic sleeve in my hand. Mom. She looked up and smiled. Yes, sweetheart? I was just thinking, we really should change this flooring. It's so cold. I placed the folder on the table. What's this? She asked. An eviction notice. You and Dad have 30 days to vacate. She blinked, then laughed. Erin. Be serious. I am. This is legal. Signed. Processed. If you're still here after 30 days, I will take it to court. You can't do this to your own mother. You'll regret it. You used my money, my name, my home, and my job. You tried to sell the house. You've crossed every line. I didn't yell. I didn't shake. I was ice. She stood. You're letting your friends poison you against your family. No. I'm protecting myself from the people who keep trying to ruin me. Just then, the door opened. My father walked in holding 2 bags of groceries. He paused, seeing the standoff. Grant, Mom said sharply, say something. He dabbed his forehead. Nancy, maybe it's time we go. She stared at him, mouth open. You're siding with her? This isn't about sides, he said softly. We crossed a line. She threw the catalog on the table and stormed off. And I just stood there, breathing evenly. I was no longer Erin the daughter. I was Erin the homeowner. Erin the professional. Erin who had worked 3 jobs to buy this place and no longer needed anyone's permission to protect it. But my mother wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I knew my mother wouldn't take the eviction notice quietly. I'd seen her wield guilt like a scalpel for most of my life. But even I wasn't prepared for how far she'd go next. The day after I served her the legal notice, I came home from work to find her sitting in my office, rifling through drawers like she had every right in the world. Mom, I said firmly, stepping in. What are you doing in here? She jumped slightly but didn't stop. I was just organizing some of your old documents. It's a mess in here. I crossed the room and snatched the file folder from her hands. It was labeled confidential, company property. Inside were signed NDAs, internal memos, and a prototype patent sketch from a project I was leading. I had been granted temporary permission to store them in my locked home office. If they got out, my job, my credibility, my entire career would be over. I stared at her. You could have jeopardized everything. She looked affronted. I was trying to help. I thought you might be hiding something important in here. Something we could use to prove you're not well. My voice dropped. Excuse me? I've spoken to a few people. Some of your coworkers even. They say you've been erratic lately. Maybe you need to take time off. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. You called my company again? She didn't answer. Just folded her arms and stood there like she was doing me a favor. That's when I noticed it. My backup USB drive was missing. I bolted for my closet safe. The door was cracked open. Mom, I said slowly, did you open my safe? It's not safe to keep things like that locked up. You need supervision. That was it. I walked out, dialed the non-emergency police line, and said the words I never thought I'd say. Hi. My name is Erin Stone. I need to report unauthorized access to my personal and work-related files. I have home surveillance footage and verbal confirmation of the breach. The officer on the line didn't even flinch. We'll dispatch a unit immediately. By the time the patrol car arrived, my mom was still in the office, holding a manila folder like a villain caught red-handed. When they asked her to step aside, she puffed up. I'm her mother. I have the right. No, ma'am, the officer said calmly. You do not. You're not listed on the deed or any of her employment contracts. This is a potential legal violation. She looked at me, betrayed. You're calling the police on me? You broke into a safe. You accessed restricted files. You're lucky I'm not pressing criminal charges yet. My father came down the stairs halfway through the conversation. His face looked older than I remembered. When the officer asked him if he was aware of her actions, he shook his head. I'm done pretending this is okay. The report was filed. The officers left. I didn't sleep that night. But the next morning, just as I was starting to think maybe things had reached their peak, I heard the unmistakable sound of shattering glass. I sprinted downstairs. There, in the middle of the driveway, stood my mother holding the framed oil painting I'd made in college. It had been the first thing I ever created that won an award. My professor called it a window into soul and strength. And now, it lay in jagged shards across the concrete. It belonged to me, she screamed. You gave it to me your freshman year. No, I said, my voice low. I loaned it to you for a gallery exhibit. I asked for it back. You refused. And now you've destroyed it. I preserved it. You smashed it, I said, staring at the wreckage. This time, I didn't just call the police, I sent them the footage directly from my phone app. An hour later, 2 officers arrived, reviewed the footage, and cited my mother for property damage and violation of temporary residency terms. Because she'd already received an eviction notice, this act pushed the situation past the legal line. They ordered both my parents to vacate the property immediately. My father rolled his suitcase without argument. My mother sobbed like a performer in the final act of a tragedy no one else was watching. Just before she stepped outside, she turned to me. You'll be alone forever. You don't know how to love. I didn't flinch. I didn't argue. I simply said, I know how to protect myself. That's more than enough. And just like that, they were gone. The silence that followed was louder than anything I'd ever experienced. I didn't clean the painting shards for hours. I sat next to them, cross-legged on the driveway, remembering how I used to think love was compromise, even if you were the only one doing the compromising. But not anymore. That week, I replaced the locks. I updated every password, every bank account PIN, every point of access in my life they had ever touched. But even then, the ghosts of their presence lingered. Vanilla candles, reorganized drawers, a faint stain on the guest bathroom wall from Dad's aftershave. It took days just to feel like the house was mine again. Then came the texts. Tuesday 5:17 p.m. Did you eat dinner? I made your favorite beef stew. Wednesday 11:52 a.m. I lost control the other day. I was only trying to help. You know that, right? I didn't respond. Not at first. But by Friday, I sent a single reply. All communication must go through email. No texts, no calls, no visits without permission. She never replied. Naomi told me a week later that my mom had tried to call her twice. Both times, Naomi let it ring. What surprised me more was my father. Every Friday, he started sending short, almost sterile emails. Updates. Notes. Nothing dramatic. Joined a community meditation class. Reading a book on family boundaries. Might be worth a read. If you're open, I'd like to invite you to coffee next month. No pressure. I'll wait to hear from you. He never pushed. And oddly, I found myself not hating him for that. But I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. That weekend, I hosted a dinner. A small one. Naomi. Ethan. Tyler from work. My neighbor Ruby, who always brought me fresh tomatoes. We ate mushroom pasta, sipped red wine, and laughed under warm lights in the dining room my mother once called lifeless. You look different, Naomi said quietly, watching me pour more wine. I smiled. Because this time, the house is mine. Not just legally, emotionally. Ethan lifted his glass. Honestly? I should have said this during court prep, but it felt too heavy then. I'm proud of you, Erin. I blinked, feeling something in my chest begin to uncoil. Later, Tyler helped me clean. Before leaving, he handed me a small box. Inside was a restored print of my shattered painting, recreated from an old photo I'd once posted online. I covered my mouth. How did you even find this? I figured, he said gently, it deserved a second chance. Just like you. I didn't cry. But I came damn close. The next week, I received an email from my father. Simple, polite. Your mother wants to visit for Thanksgiving. I've told her clearly, no visit unless there's a formal apology. Just wanted you to know where I stand. I read that line twice. Where I stand. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like he was trying to play both sides. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't asking me to reconsider or soften the blow. He was drawing a line and standing behind it. Still, I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how. After everything that had happened, silence was safer. Clean. But something in me shifted. Not toward reconciliation, toward closure. I began reclaiming more than just my home. I started repainting the parts of myself that had dulled from years of second-guessing. I brought back the ash gray for the living room walls. I bought myself a new desk, oak, wide, with built-in shelves for my research folders and tech gear. It wasn't just furniture. It was a symbol. I was rebuilding the parts of my life that had been torn down, not just physically, but emotionally, too. Naomi came over one evening with wine and a tiny bamboo plant in a glass jar. To new growth, she said with a wink. Too soon for plant metaphors, I teased, but I still placed it on the windowsill by my desk. Every part of my house felt different now. I rearranged the furniture, not to undo what my parents had done, but to make it mine again. I replaced the ruined rug in the hallway. I hung new art, abstract, bold, nothing like the soft florals my mother had filled the house with. And on the wall behind my desk, I framed Tyler's restored version of the painting she had shattered. And every day, I worked with more clarity than I'd ever had. Then one Thursday morning, I got a strange email. It was from someone named Alan Breyer, a real estate investor in Boulder. The subject line read, "Follow up on your property transfer request." I opened it, frowning. "Dear Ms. Stone. Following up on our previous discussion regarding the transfer of 42 Willow Street. Just waiting on final signature to proceed with initial buyout estimate. Let me know when your mother is available to finalize." I stared at the screen, stunned. They were still trying to sell the house. Even after being evicted. Even after police reports. Even after I'd made every legal boundary clear, my mother was still impersonating me behind my back. This wasn't just control. It was obsession. I called Emma immediately. "What can I do?" "Forward every message. We'll contact the agent and file a cease and desist for fraudulent representation. Also," she added, "this qualifies as attempted property fraud. If you want to press charges, you can." The word charges lingered in the air like a loaded gun. I wasn't sure if I had the strength to go that far. But fate had already decided for me. The very next day, I received a notice from the Denver County Clerk's office. Someone had filed a power of attorney document in my name. Forged. I called the office in a panic. "This is fraud. I never signed anything." The clerk on the line was calm but concerned. "Can you come in and file a fraud complaint? Bring your ID and deed. We'll open an internal investigation." It all became clear. My mother hadn't just tried to take over my home. She wanted my identity. My decisions. My name. And in her eyes, it was all justified. Because family knows best. That night, I wrote the hardest email I'd ever written in my life. Not to her. To myself. It was a journal entry I hadn't let myself write until then. "Dear Erin. You are not cruel. You are not broken. You are not ungrateful for wanting peace. For drawing lines. For locking the door. They tried to tell you love means sacrifice, and you believed them. Until it became clear they weren't sacrificing anything, they were consuming. But now you see it. Clearer than ever. Love without respect isn't love. Family without boundaries isn't family. You are allowed to protect yourself. In fact, you must." The next week, I filed the official fraud complaint and submitted everything to Emma. She took it from there: cease and desist letters, warning notices, even a formal record added to the county office to flag any future attempts to act on my behalf. Still, something in me ached. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew now, for certain, that the woman who gave birth to me would rather destroy me than admit she no longer controlled me. But I wasn't broken. One Saturday, just before the first snow, I hosted another small dinner. Naomi brought her boyfriend. Ruby brought pumpkin pie. Ethan made it this time, flying in from Austin with a bottle of aged bourbon and a slightly shy smile. "You're glowing," he said as we stood in the kitchen, pouring drinks. "I'm grounded," I corrected. "Took a long time to get here." We clinked glasses. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, I stood in my office, barefoot, sipping tea. The new painting on the wall caught the moonlight. I studied it, its sharp brushstrokes, its bold blues and reds, and realized something. It wasn't a replacement for the old painting. It was a rebirth. This home wasn't a battleground anymore. It was my sanctuary. And this time, no one, not even the people who called themselves family, would take that from me again. The weeks that followed were quiet. No party balloons. No strange cars in my driveway. No scent of vanilla candles masking the air. Just the gentle rhythm of my life, finally, beautifully uninterrupted. Still, trauma lingers in odd places. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and instinctively check the hallway cameras. Other times, I'd reach for my debit card at the store and hesitate, fearing it had been used again without my consent. I kept my passwords in an encrypted vault. My documents locked in a fireproof safe. The calm I had earned wasn't fragile, but it was still learning how to trust itself. One Wednesday afternoon, I received an email from the Denver County investigator handling my mother's forged power of attorney filing. The tone was professional, but the implications were brutal. The document submitted by Mrs. Nancy Stone bears significant inconsistencies with your official signature on file. We have completed verification and can confirm the form is forged. This incident is now considered a criminal offense under Colorado law. We are proceeding with formal documentation. Please advise if you intend to press full charges or limit the action to record invalidation. I closed the laptop and just sat there, staring at my hands. They were steady. Which surprised me. I had expected to feel fear, or fury, or even triumph. But all I felt was done. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about making sure this ended. For good. That Friday, I responded to the investigator. Please record the invalidation and proceed with documentation. At this time, I am not pressing full criminal charges, but I want the attempt on record. I need to protect myself. Within minutes, I received confirmation. My mother was now officially listed in the county fraud registry. Any future attempts to access property, financial accounts, or identity-based documents in my name would immediately trigger a legal flag. The system would now guard me, where my own family had failed. It was over. Or so I thought. That Sunday, I received a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual, handwritten letter, sealed in a white envelope and slipped under my door like a ghost returning one last time. The handwriting was unmistakable, my mother's. Erin. I never thought it would come to this. You humiliated me. You called the police on your own mother. You turned your father against me. You made our family look like criminals. But worst of all? You've become someone cold. Someone unrecognizable. I gave you life. I gave you everything. And one day, you'll realize you destroyed your own blood for a house. A job. Some privacy. I hope the silence keeps you warm. Mom. I folded the letter slowly, slipped it into a Ziploc, and filed it with the rest of my legal documents. Not because I needed to remember it, but because I needed to be ready. Just in case. Later that day, I emailed Emma and attached a photo of the letter. She responded in her usual calm tone. Keep it documented. We'll add it to your protection record. You've done everything right. And yet, despite the bitterness of my mother's words, something about it brought peace. She had written me off. Which meant, for the first time, she had accepted that she no longer controlled me. Control is a funny thing. It doesn't always come through shouting or violence. Sometimes, it wears a smile. A casserole dish. A just checking in text that unravels your day. But not anymore. A few days later, I found myself staring at a blank canvas in my office. The old painting had been destroyed. The restored one Tyler gifted me now hung proudly on the wall. But this canvas, untouched, called to me. I picked up my brush, dipped it into a deep cobalt blue, and made the first stroke. Then another. And another. Not to replace what was lost. But to create what I had never dared to paint before, a version of me that didn't need to ask for permission. By the time the sun had set, the canvas held a storm, swirling skies, jagged cliffs, and a small figure standing at the edge. Alone. Powerful. Unmoved. A mirror of what I had become. A week later, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera's gold habit, and saw my father standing there, holding a small paper bag and a nervous smile. I opened the door slowly. "Hey," he said softly. "I brought pastries." I stepped aside. "Come in." He sat at the kitchen counter, looking smaller than I remembered. Tired. But not defeated. "I didn't know what else to do," he said. "I should have said something earlier. I should have stopped her." "You didn't have to stop her for me," I replied. "You had to stop her for yourself." He nodded. Then pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat. "I spoke to a lawyer. I've officially signed over the funds from the car she sold. 11,200. I had kept it. I don't even know why. Guilt, maybe. But I want you to have it." I took the paper slowly. "You didn't owe me that." "I know," he said. "But I owe it to myself to make things right while I still can." He didn't stay long. Just enough to share tea, talk about a few books, and ask quietly if I'd consider having coffee again sometime. I said maybe. And meant it. That night, I opened his envelope and slid the check into my drawer. But more importantly, I opened my inbox and found his last Friday email. Reading a book on family estrangement. Interesting quote. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting someone walk away if they refuse to see the damage they cause. I reread it twice. Then I clicked reply. My reply to my father was only one line. That quote meant more than you know. "Let's meet for coffee next weekend. Just us." He responded within the hour. I could almost feel his relief through the screen. There were no exclamation marks. No overcompensation. Just a quiet gratitude that said, "Thank you for giving me a chance, even when I didn't deserve it." We met at a small cafe just outside Cheeseman Park, neutral ground. He wore a gray sweater, looked thinner, older, more introspective. I didn't rush to hug him. He didn't reach for one. We simply nodded, like two people trying to meet for the first time, again. The conversation was careful at first. Weather, work, books. But then he leaned forward, voice low. "I watched her for years, Erin. I knew she was overbearing. Controlling. But I thought if I kept the peace, it would protect you." I stirred my coffee, slowly. "It didn't." "I know," he said, looking away. "I failed you." We sat in silence for a while. Then I said, "She didn't just try to take my house. She tried to erase me." He nodded. "She wanted you back in the box she built. She never understood you left it for a reason." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something strange. He wasn't the same man I grew up with. He was humbler now. Softer. Less concerned with defending her. More interested in acknowledging truth. That mattered more than I expected. When we left the cafe, he reached out, not for a hug, but to hand me a small envelope. "You don't have to open this now," he said. "Or ever. But if you want to understand where she came from. Why she is the way she is." I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on my dresser for 2 full days. When I finally did, I found old family letters. Photos. Her childhood medical bills. A journal entry from when she was 14, begging the world to see her, love her, keep her. It didn't excuse what she did. But it explained why she never learned to stop grasping. Why control, for her, was love. Why she clung to me so tightly she didn't care if she crushed me in the process. I folded the papers, set them back in the envelope, and placed it in my bottom drawer, not to forget, but to finally understand without being defined by it. That weekend, I hosted another dinner, this time, a little bigger. More friends. More food. More light. My office door stayed open the entire evening, the new painting visible from the kitchen. The storm on canvas. The lone figure standing strong. It became a conversation piece. "Who is that?" Ruby asked, pouring wine. I smiled. It's me. Or maybe who I had to become. She grinned. She looks unstoppable. I hope so. Later, as guests trickled out, Naomi stayed behind to help clean. She walked into my office, took one look at the painting, and said, "You should exhibit again. You're not just surviving anymore. You're radiating." I looked at her, a lump rising in my throat. "You think so?" "I know so," she said. "And Erin? You didn't just reclaim your house. You reclaimed yourself." She was right. It had taken years. Years of silence. Years of making myself smaller. Years of confusing obedience with love. But no more. That night, I slept with my windows open. The cold Denver air rolled in like a clean slate, washing over my ash-gray walls and warm lighting. No more vanilla candles. No more voices echoing down the hall. Just the sound of quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like emptiness, but freedom. Then Monday morning came. And with it, one last storm. I was mid-Zoom call for a project update when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I let it ring. Then a voicemail popped up. I clicked it instinctively. It was her voice. "Erin. This will be my last message. You've turned everyone against me. You've made a show of everything. But I'm still your mother. You can't rewrite that. You think this is over? It's not." My hand froze on the trackpad. She didn't sound angry. She sounded deranged. Desperate. As if the loss of control had unhinged something deep inside her. I forwarded the voicemail to Emma and to the police department's contact handling my protection case. They responded within minutes. "Thank you for the documentation. This constitutes a threat, and we're filing it as part of the ongoing case. If further contact is made, we recommend considering a restraining order." I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there in the silence and whispered to myself, "She's wrong. It is over." Because for the first time, she wasn't the voice in my head anymore. She was just a voicemail. A file. A case number. And I was the one with control now. Later that evening, I updated the firmware on my home security system. I changed all my locks. Again. Not out of fear, but from a place of finality. Then I walked into my office, sat at my desk, and opened a fresh canvas. This one wasn't stormy. It was light. Mountains. Sky. A woman walking forward, face turned to the sun. Her past behind her, but not erased. Just distant. Fading. I called it exit wound. Because healing isn't clean. But it's always worth the scar. It's been 6 months since that final voicemail. 6 months since the last time I let my mother's voice infiltrate my home, my mind, my peace. She never called again. Never emailed. Never showed up, not even at Christmas, which she used to treat like a spiritual battleground for control, guilt, and performance. There was no apology. No letter. No explanation. Just absence. And for the first time, it felt like a gift. I didn't file the restraining order. I kept it drafted, notarized, and ready in a file folder, just in case. But the silence spoke louder than any courtroom document ever could. She finally realized there was no way back in. Not this time. Not ever. My father and I meet for coffee now. Once every 2 weeks. It's not overly sentimental. He doesn't press. He doesn't make excuses. He just shows up. And that, oddly enough, has become enough. He never says her name. Sometimes, in moments of quiet, I wonder if he misses her. If he regrets not doing more. But those aren't questions I need answered. The past happened. It left bruises. But I survived. And I rebuilt. Last month, I entered a regional art show, my first in nearly a decade. I submitted 2 pieces. One was Exit Wound, the painting of the woman walking away from the storm. The second was a new piece, finished just days before the submission deadline. A charcoal sketch of a house, broken down the middle, but not shattered. One half filled with noise, lace curtains, and silhouettes reaching out with sharp, maternal fingers. The other side was empty. Clean. Bare, but peaceful. The title? Inheritance. It didn't win first place. But it didn't need to. A woman approached me at the show, middle-aged, soft-spoken, eyes red-rimmed. "I saw your painting," she whispered. "The one with the house. I think I used to live there." I smiled. "I think a lot of us did." She squeezed my hand, and just like that, I realized, this story, my story, was no longer just mine. It was a language others understood without translation. And that's when the healing became real. Not when I locked the door. Not when I filed the eviction. Not even when I painted again. But when I shared my pain out loud, and someone else nodded and said, "Me too." That's the power of naming things. Of refusing to carry shame that doesn't belong to you. Of setting boundaries so sharp they can cut through generational guilt. Today, my home is exactly what I built it to be. It's not perfect. It still has echoes. But they don't control me anymore. The bookshelf in my office holds more than files now. It holds candles I chose. Books I love. Sketchbooks filled with new pieces. Not born of survival, but of expression. Of joy. Of freedom. The door to my office still locks, but not out of fear. It's simply mine. And sometimes, on quiet Sunday mornings, I sit by the window, sip coffee from the mug Naomi gave me after the court hearing, the one that says no is a complete sentence, and let the light pour in. Not because I've forgotten. But because I've moved on. From control. From chaos. From the kind of love that says you owe me everything because I gave you life. I don't owe anyone my silence. Not anymore. My name is Erin Stone. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of how I took back my home, my name, my future, one locked door at a time. Erin's story is a powerful reminder that family bonds should never come at the cost of your boundaries, safety, or sanity. Blood does not entitle anyone to ownership over your choices, your space, or your peace. Setting boundaries doesn't make you ungrateful, it makes you whole. As Erin learned. Sometimes, love has to end so that healing can begin. What would you have done in her shoes? Was she right to evict her own parents? Or do you believe family should be forgiven no matter what? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge.